sweetheart, and I will call back and call him sweetheart. And having called him sweetheart, I will take the opportunity to educate him that in the legal profession, you become senior by virtue of when you sign the role of advocate. So anybody who signs the role of advocate after me is my junior. So to that extent, I am a senior advocate vis-a-vis anybody who has signed after me. And that is very many lawyers. So by that virtue alone, I am a senior counsel. However, in the last few years, the Law Society deemed it fit to select a few people and designate a title called senior counsel. That does not preclude me from being a senior counsel. I am still senior to a number of people, even within this house, who are designated as senior counsel. They are still my juniors, as a matter of fact. But having said that, I just want to say, Mr. Speaker, that I want to support that report, but I want to avoid your pet subject, which is LGBTQI. And Mr. Speaker, the reason I will avoid that subject is because it has no impact on litmus paper in relation to my life. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak instead to the issue of the Treaty of the ACPU. I have been a member of the Pan-African Parliament, and in this session, I was actually hoping to be a member of the ACPU Parliament. And one of the reasons that I am not pursuing it is because of the issue of the expired treaty, which I was hoping would be designated along the lines of the Pan-African Parliament. And Mr. Speaker, if you look at the way the Pan-African Parliament is designated, is such that once we have a new parliament, the Parliament of Kenya will designate 5 people that we pass through this floor, and you become a member of that parliament for 5 years. And you are able to contribute meaningfully in that parliament for 5 years. But what is happening now is, by the structure of the ACPU, is that we only have 2 members who you could say are permanent members, who are the speakers. So when I actually requested to be designated there, then Mr. Speaker, I was told I can attend some sessions. And as the so-called senior lawyer that I am, I don't want to attend a conference. I want to be a member of a parliament. I don't want to be in a conference. And so I'm very happy, and I want to thank the members of this parliament and the Senate across the floor who in absentia elected me to the IPU, Committee on Human Rights of Parliamentarians, and by that designation, I stand to sit in the IPU Parliament for 2 years. And I have been there for the last, we've had actually 2 sessions. It's a very powerful committee, but also a very important committee because it deals with issues of human rights of parliamentarians. And I want to say that one of the things that I want to thank God for as a country is that we have made serious progress in terms of human rights, and I'm hoping that this country does not go back on the mileage that we have had in terms of human rights. If you see some of the things that my committee in IPU deals with, parliamentarians, like one woman parliamentarian who was shot dead because she could not agree to marry an army general. We have cases of women who are gang raped members of parliament because you don't agree with the executive. We have people who midway their term, they are stopped from being members of parliament. But even more recently, I won't mention because it's a friendly country, one of the countries actually, we had members of the police in uniform getting into parliament. Mr. Speaker, those are things that we hope we never see in this Parliament of Kenya, or something close to what we saw in 2014 when we were dealing with the Security Laws Amendment Bill. And I'd want to encourage, and that's why some of us come on very strongly, when we see even indications of violations of human rights or things that look like dictatorial tendencies that are emerging by this government. Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage that even as the government of Kenya is negotiating over the ACPU, the new treaty, our main focus should be actually the structure and the powers that we have within the ACPU. because I've talked to some of the members who have served in the ACPU, and their concerns is that the power tilts much more towards Europe than it does to the Pacific or the African countries. And one of the things that I'd also want to encourage is to find a way of creating connections without making it an appendage of the Pan-African Parliament, because one of the things that I've heard being said is that they want to see how they can make ACPU sort of an appendage. One of the things that I've seen through even the recently meeting that we attended in Bahrain, in Manama, on the IPU, is that it gives us opportunities, despite our diverse cultures, to discuss issues that are of concern to us as the world, as a globe, as Africa, and even as Kenya, so that we put forth our issues. The tragedy, of course, that from the African perspective is we never seem to speak with one voice. I'm hoping that Kenya can take leadership, which it already is doing very well, and I want to congratulate our speakers for the leadership that they have shown. And Kenya is doing a very, very strong showing in the IPU, and our voices on various issues is heard very, very strongly. We spoke very recently about the issue of climate change that is bringing a lot of crisis, and I want to really regretfully say that one of those aspects is this afternoon, one of the persons from my village called Richard Ndege was killed by a hippo, because now the hippos are invading the homes. And I'm actually calling the wildlife that they must, Kenya wildlife, that they must see that there's something that they must do to make sure that they create that sort of balance, even as we are dealing with issues of climate change. Mr. Speaker, I'd want to say that some of the things that we must be negotiating as a country, even in the new ACPU agreement, is to ensure the inclusion of women and to make sure that the voices of women is heard and that is entrenched in the treaty the number of women who will be permanent members of the ACPU. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, I support and thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Millie Grace Akoth Odhiambo. Very informative, always on matters we overlook as Parliament.